I did this for you. I went and made a chart this morning just for you guys. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so this is Daniel 11, and the first 35 verses of Daniel 11 are uh, contain 135 prophecies. Well, different people count it differently. Well, is this count as a separate one, or is that one? But essentially, it's about 135 different prophecies, and they've all everyone agrees, all scholars agree that these have already been fulfilled. These are all past. All scholars, there's always going to be an outlier, but pretty much every scholar believes this. It's very clear, and so what we're going to do is we're going to start Daniel 11 by walking through the first 35 verses. I'm going to try to do it quickly, even though there's tons of content. I preached a whole sermon on those first 35 verses, and you can go watch that later. But I want to give you this because it's already been fulfilled. Now, you might be here saying, but I'm here to talk about the Antichrist. I get that. From verse 36 on, all the way through the end of chapter 12 is all about the wars of the Antichrist. That's why I titled the video today, The Wars of the Antichrist. But the problem is that the wars of the Antichrist, you can't really interpret that section if you don't know what's leading up to it. And so God gives us 135 prophecies that have already been fulfilled. That they were fulfilled about two and 300 years after Daniel wrote them, so that today we're able to look at those and see how they were fulfilled and the manner in which they were fulfilled, and say that's what we should expect for our fulfillment of the Antichrist prophecies in verses 36 going on. So this is going to be, I think, very helpful for us. So you think, well, I want to get to the Antichrist. I want to get to the Antichrist. Well, if you're watching later, after a couple days after the stream, I'll go in and put timestamps in, so you can go in and just skip right to the Antichrist part. But I think it's very helpful, so I'm going to include in the stream today, going through, and I'm going to give you just the brief version if you want it more detailed. Again, Mike Winger has done it. He did a great job, but probably certainly better than I'm sure I'll do. And also, I've preached a sermon on it, so you can go back and do those sorts of researches. To give it a little preface, Daniel 11 is actually not, how do I say this? So the book of Daniel, every chapter is pretty much an individual happening. Chapter 1 and 2 kind of runs together, even though they're two sort of individual things that are happening. Chapter 3 is an individual event. Chapter 4, an individual event. 5. You really have an individual vision start in chapter 7. You have an individual vision in chapter 7 that Daniel has. We already talked about that with the beasts and the kingdoms and all that. And then chapter 8, you have another vision that Daniel had. In chapter 9, you have another vision. But then in chapters 10, 11, and 12, the last 3 chapters of the book, it's all one thing. It's not one chapter is one vision, one chapter is another. It's actually all one. And chapter 10, we're not starting there today just for sake of time, but chapter 10 is all just like the angels coming up and talking to Daniel about the vision they're about to give him. And it's really just a preface to show how significant this vision is. I mean, that one of the angels was held up on his way there. He was detained by a demon, and like it appears that Daniel actually sees Jesus, like the Son of God, in human flesh, appear in front of him, or maybe in glorified flesh, I suppose, appear in front of him, and he falls on his face. It was just a glorious chapter. But I just want to give you that preface that 10, 11, and 12 are all one vision, and we're jumping in at the beginning of the information part of the vision, the prophecy part of the vision. But chapter 10 is where it's all prefaced, and in chapter 12, this will come into play, because there'll be Daniel will say, then I asked this question to one of the angels that was standing by, and it's like, wait, there's angels standing by? Yes, that's what's going on in chapter 10. In chapter 11, we're kind of jumping into the middle of the story, but at the beginning of where the prophetic stuff starts. So just bear with me on that part. Okay, let's start by analyzing this. Verse 1 of chapter 11 says this. And remember, we're going to try to take the first 35 verses as sort of our introduction to the Antichrist stuff that starts in verse 36. So, also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede. Now, Darius the Mede is the guy who Cyrus the Great set up as the regent over the city of Babylon when Cyrus, the emperor of Persia, conquered Babylon, he set up Darius the Mede over Babylon. So he says in the first year of Darius the Mede, which would be also the first year after Cyrus conquered Babylon. So this is during the reign of Cyrus the Great. You can see that. Well, let me pull it up on your screen. There you go. During the year of Cyrus the Great, during the reign of Cyrus the Great. And he goes on to the next prophecy. Even I stood to confirm and to strengthen. This isn't a prophecy. Verse 2 starts the prophecy. And now I will show thee. I stood to confirm and strengthen him, by the way, is an angel who's talking to Daniel. That's just a side note, interesting thing. An angel was strengthening Cyrus so that Cyrus could conquer Babylon because it was part of the plan of God. Very cool. Anyway, verse 2. And now I will show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia. So there's going to be 3 more kings in Persia, and then the 4th is the one I want to talk about, is basically what he's saying. Well, what are the next 3 kings that reign after Cyrus the Great? Well, looks like on your screen, the picture of me is covering up one of those, but it's Cambyses II, Pseudo-Smyrtus, and Darius. Those are the next 3 kings. Darius the First. Those are the next 3 kings in to reign over the kingdom of Persia, the empire. Now, the 4th king to reign over the empire of Persia would be Xerxes the First. In the Bible, he's referred to as Ahasuerus, and you read about him in the book of Esther. And he actually was a very, very rich king, and he had a very massive army. The thing that Artaxerxes did is that he invaded the Greek city-states in what is today Turkey and Greece and Macedonia and all that. So he goes over there and actually gets a lot of the Greeks very mad at him for how he did it. And he when he invaded, you may have seen the movie The 300, the story of the 300 people, 300 Greeks who stood and resisted his army and all this stuff. Well, the Greeks never forgot that. Look at what happens. By the way, this is all stuff that happens years after Daniel is prophesying this. We're talking 200 and 300 years after Daniel makes this prophecy. Daniel's 535 BC when he's making the prophecy. These things are happening beginning, I think, in the 300s BC. Okay, Alexander the Great, verse 3. And a mighty king shall stand up and shall rule with great dominion and shall do according to his will. Notice what happens to Ahasuerus. He shall be far richer than they all, and by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia, which he did. He invaded Greece. And a mighty king shall stand up that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. Alexander the Great, about 100, 150 years after Ahasuerus invaded, the Greeks were still angry about this invasion by the Persians. And Alexander the Great rallied the Greek city-states and formed the Greek Empire. In 13 years, by the way, they ended up conquering the Persians in 13 years. Lightning speed. And many historians say we don't know how they won this battle. And it was just because they were so mad. They were very angry. Verse 4 says, and when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be... he will rule with great dominion and do according to his will. He stirred up all against the realm of Grecia. So the Greeks are stirred up. This is exactly what happens. Verse 4, when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. It's very interesting that they were celebrating his victory over Persia. He had just conquered the known world, Persia. And this is when Alexander the Great suddenly died. Some people say that he was poisoned and killed. We don't know for sure, but at any rate, when the dust all settled, there was some battle among his generals. When the dust settled, he didn't have a son that took over after him. Instead, 4 of his generals took over, and they were Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. Now, Cassander took the area that we know today as Greece, Lysimachus, what we know today as Turkey. So you have east and west. And then you have Ptolemy in Egypt and Seleucus in Syria, Babylon, and Persia. So that's north and south from Israel. So it says he's divided towards the 4 winds of heaven. Okay, north, south, east, west. And not to his posterity. So it's not his son who takes over after him, nor according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others besides those. So it goes to someone else, and these are four of his generals. Now, this is very interesting because what we're seeing, and even just the first four verses, is that every single piece of this is fulfilled very specifically and very obviously. These are public things that are known to historians. For the last thousands of years, historians have written about these things. These are not things that are secret, that are in backdoor meetings that nobody knows about. Oh, secretly he was this or secretly he was that, or we just don't know. He must have been. These are public, obvious, provable things that God wants us to know actually were fulfilled. That's cool, and it also helps us understand what we should expect when we get to the Antichrist part, right? So let's move on before we take up all of our time just on the first 35 verses. Okay, we'll just read through and I'll point out how these are fulfilled. Verse 5, and the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, actually one of his satraps, one of his men who's ruling underneath him, the king of the south is the Ptolemy dynasty, Ptolemy the first. One of his satraps was a man named Seleucus the first. He shall be strong above him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. So one of his lower rulers actually rebelled against him and took the region. You see over here, Seleucus ended up with Syria, Babylon, and Persia. Seleucus the first stole it after ruling it underneath Ptolemy. He ends up stealing it and taking it for himself. And these become the focus of the rest of these next several verses. Is the north, which would be the Seleucian Empire of the Greeks, the Syria, Babylon, Persia area, and then the south, the Ptolemaic dynasty of the Greeks, the Egypt and Libya and the Africans. Why is that north and south? Because Israel's right in between those, right? You got Syria, Babylon, all this stuff to the north. And then you've got Egypt and Africa to the south. And so this becomes the focus of the rest of these prophecies, these two dynasties, Ptolemy and Seleucus. Okay? So, verse 6, and at the end of years, they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north. Now, to give you an idea of the timing, we're from verse to verse, we're skipping from one king of the dynasty to the next king of the dynasty to the next king of the dynasty, so we're moving forward. Now we're in Ptolemy the second. Ptolemy the second, let me give you some dates here. Ptolemy the second would have been, we're talking about 246 is when he died. So a little before 246. Ptolemy the second wants to make a peace deal with the king of the north, who's now Antiochus the second. So Ptolemy II wants to make a deal with Antiochus II, so he gives him his daughter Berenice. Now, the problem is Antiochus II is already married, so Antiochus II divorces his wife, puts her away, and her name was Laodice, and Laodice is not happy about that. So Berenice comes and marries Antiochus II, but as soon as Ptolemy II died, Antiochus II immediately put away Berenice and took Laodice back. Well, it says that she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand nor his arm, but he shall be given up, and they that brought her and he that begot her, that's Ptolemy II, he died, and immediately she's put away, so she does not retain the power of the arm. And he that strengthened her in these times. This is all specifically fulfilled. In fact, Laodice poisoned Antiochus II because she was angry that he had married Berenice, and so even though she eventually murdered Berenice and Berenice's child. That's what it was. So Laodice, when she comes back into power, she poisons her husband, Antiochus II, and then tracks down Berenice and Berenice's child so that Berenice's child doesn't have claim to the throne, and kills them as well. So they all die, just like verse 6 says. Then verse 7 says, but a branch out of her roots, that's Berenice's roots. Her roots would be her father, Ptolemy II. A branch out of her father's roots would be the next king, or Berenice's brother. That would be Ptolemy the third. I keep want to say Ptolemy. It's just Ptolemy. It's like pterodactyl, right? Let me go to the next verse here. All right. So a branch out of her roots would be Ptolemy the third. Shall stand up in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north. This is now Seleucus the second, Laodice's son, and shall deal against them, and shall prevail, and shall also carry captives into Egypt their gods, with their princes and their precious vessels of silver and gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. This did in fact happen. Ptolemy the third came in and invaded and killed Laodice, and invaded all the way up until the Euphrates River, and then turned around and left. He did what he wanted to do. He killed the one who killed his sister, and then he leaves. So the king of the south shall come into his own land, and shall return into his own land. Right? Shall come into his kingdom, and shall return into his own land. Verse 10, but his sons shall be stirred up. Now, the king of the south comes back, but his sons, meaning Seleucus II's sons, are stirred up to respond to the king of the south. This is the king of the north. And his sons refers to Seleucus II's sons after Seleucus II is dead, and that's Seleucus III and Antiochus III. This Antiochus III is known as Antiochus the Great. But Seleucus III is the initial guy who takes control, and he assembles a great army to attack, to respond and to attack, but he dies. He's killed a little bit before he can invade. So then Antiochus III takes over, his brother, and he actually attacks back at Ptolemy III. And so this is again fulfilled exactly as it said. One shall certainly come. Only one of the two brothers will come and overflow and pass through, and then shall he return and be stirred up even to his fortress. Okay, now the king of the south. And the king of the south, this is now, Ptolemy the third is dead, so we're now on Ptolemy the fourth. He's also known as Ptolemy Philopator. He shall be moved with choler, and shall come and fight with him, and even with the king of the north. This is Antiochus the third, Antiochus the Great, right? And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. And when he hath taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. This is actually an ancient battle that's well known to historians. It's known as, let me make sure I get this right. It's called the Battle of Raphia, and we know that there was at least 70,000 foot soldiers in the Battle of Raphia. That's why it says many 10,000s, but many other soldiers as well, riding elephants and all this kind of stuff. And it's a very well known, documented battle. And yes, Ptolemy succeeded in that, but he's not strengthened by it. He doesn't retain any land. He doesn't keep Syria or anything. He goes back. But the king of the north shall return and set forth a multitude of greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and much riches. Let's go to the next page here. And in those times there shall stand up against the king of the south, this is Ptolemy the fifth, also the robbers of thy people, and shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall. This time the king of the north, as Antiochus the Great, comes through, and the robbers of thy people, means Daniel's people, they join up. They're sick and tired of being ruled by the Ptolemies, because the Ptolemies have come up through Israel and attacked the north, and they control Israel. They don't want to be controlled by the Ptolemies anymore. So some of the people of Israel join up, some of the violent men, that's what robbers mean, some of the violent, baser men, join up with Antiochus the Great and go and attack Ptolemy with him. And he gets other people, I think Philip the Great of Macedon or something like that. I don't know, I might be getting that name wrong. He gets other alliances together to go and attack Ptolemy. But eventually, the problem is the people of Israel who joined up with him, they failed in their endeavor because Antiochus was just as tyrannical to them as was Ptolemy. So it didn't really help them very much. But verse 15 says, so the king of the north shall come and cast a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will. That's Antiochus the Great. He is successful in this campaign. And none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. He's very, very hard on the people of Israel as he marches through and retakes this land through Israel. Verse 17, he shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her, but he shall not stand on his side, neither before him. So he comes down and he sort of conquers, he sort of subjugates the southern kingdom of the Ptolemies. And to make sure that the Ptolemies stay in line with Antiochus the Great, Antiochus the Great gives him to wife his daughter Cleopatra. Now, he expects Cleopatra to help keep this guy in line, but Cleopatra actually sides with her husband over her father, and they rebel. So she shall not, notice what it says, she shall not stand on his side, neither before him. After this, shall he turn his face unto the isles? Now, this is talking about the northern Mediterranean area, and Antiochus the Great, it did in fact invade what we call Turkey, the northern Mediterranean provinces, and he is successful until they send a letter to Rome and ask Rome to help them. And now, if you understand what's going on right now in history, Rome is the rising power, and these two squabbling powers in the Middle East, the northern Greek Empire of the Seleucids and the southern Greek Empire of the Ptolemies, are actually keeping each other distracted while Rome rises in strength. And so when these Mediterranean city-states ask for help from Rome, Rome comes. And they actually send a General Manius Achilles Galabrio, who comes and routs Antiochus the Great. And not only does he defeat him, but he forces him to pay back the cost of the war to Rome. So he is extremely strapped for cash going forward now. The Ptolemies have rebelled against him, and he's not gotten anything. He's actually have to pay back all this extremely high cost of the war. So that's why it says, he shall turn his face unto the isles, and shall take many, but a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach he shall cause it to turn upon him, and he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. This is actually what he did in order to try to pay back this massive, exorbitant cost for the cost of the war that he has to pay back to Rome now. He gets pretty desperate. He even invades personally. Antiochus the Great invades his own temples and his own land, and is caught robbing from his own temples. They think he's a thief, and they kill him. And that's how Antiochus the Great ends, trying to get money. Now, his son, it says, then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes. That would make sense, because he's got to find a way to pay this all back, right? So there's going to stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes. That's Seleucus the Fourth. That's Antiochus, one of Antiochus's sons. Now, Antiochus's other son, when he was conquered by the Romans, when he was thwarted by the Romans, they took his second son to Rome as a captive. He's not the official next heir anyway, but to make sure that Antiochus the Great didn't rebel against them, they took Antiochus the Fourth to his son to Rome and kept him captive there. So his son Seleucus the Fourth, Antiochus has two sons, Seleucus the Fourth and Antiochus the Fourth, who's also called Philopator, is a raiser of taxes. He doesn't live very long. Some say that he is murdered by Antiochus, because it says, in the glory of his kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. So Antiochus convinces the Romans, while he's held captive, to exchange him for Seleucus's son. Well, you don't need me anymore because my dad's dead, right? You need Seleucus's son. So he gets the Romans to capture Seleucus's son and release him. Antiochus then goes, and most people believe that he's the one who poisoned or arranged the plot to poison Seleucus the Fourth. And so he kills his own brother. And then the next guy who's supposed to be in charge is Seleucus's infant son. But since he's an infant, Antiochus says, I will sort of mentor him. I will lead him until he's ready to take the kingdom. And as soon as the son gets old enough to take the kingdom, Antiochus the Fourth kills him. and takes the kingdom. So Antiochus becomes the next person. That's why it says, in his estate shall stand up a vile person to whom they shall not give the honor of they don't give him the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and attain the kingdom by flatteries. And with the arms of a flood shall they overflow from before him and shall be broken. Yea, also the prince of the covenant. So the prince of the covenant here is referring to Onias, the high priest in Israel. When Antiochus finally gains control over the Greek Empire, the northern Greek Empire, the Seleucid Greek Empire, he begins to persecute the Jews because he calls himself Antiochus Epiphanes, which means the appearance of God. He believes that he's God in human flesh, and the Jews will not worship him as God. So he actually sells the high priesthood. He removes Onias, who's the rightful high priest, and sells the high priesthood first to a man named Jason, and then later he sells the high priesthood to a guy named Menelaus, who's not even a Levite. And this is, of course, absolutely terrible. And this is recorded for us, by the way. The prophecy specifically of all the abominations that Antiochus does is recorded for us in Daniel 8. We talked about that in our last stream. Anyway, so this is what's being detailed here in Daniel 11. You say, what about the Antichrist? We're almost there. I promise. Okay. And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and become strong with a small people. He shall enter peaceably, even upon the fattest places of the province, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches. He would actually steal. He would tax people and even just take money from his own people, but then he would give the money strategically out to his generals and to people that he needs to support him. So he scatters the riches. So he looks very generous, but he's stealing them from other people. And he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds even for a time. He even actually goes and steals from the temple in Jerusalem. He shall stir up his power and courage against the king of the south. Now, the guy in the south, and the Ptolemy in Egypt at this time, is Ptolemy the sixth. And he goes with a great army to the king of the south and shall be stirred up to battle with a very great army and mighty army, but he shall not stand, for they shall forecast devices against him. So he comes against them. He succeeds fairly well, but doesn't accomplish everything he wants to do. This is what we know from history. Let's just try to speed this up a little bit. Yea, that feed of the portion of his meat shall destroy him, and his army shall overflow, and many shall fall down slain. So this is Antiochus Epiphanes is actually relatively successful. So he comes down into the south and he attacks, and it says, they that feed of the portion of his meat, that's the king of the south. His own brother is actually conspires against him and betrays him and gives him bad advice and tells him to flee the city because it's being attacked by Antiochus, and he actually gets captured, and Antiochus is pretty successful. He actually conquers the Ptolemies here. And it says, both these kings, that's referring to these two brothers, shall do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table. They're sitting at the table, and they're lying to each other, and actually stabbing each other back, and it's this whole thing. Long story, but it shall not prosper, for the end shall be at the time appointed. Antiochus is going to be successful at this campaign into Egypt. Then shall he return to his land with greater riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant. He shall do exploits and return to his own land. So Antiochus goes back up to his land in the north, and he stops in Jerusalem and does terrible things to the people of Israel. The next time he comes through, though, he comes back down, and this time the Ptolemies again have rebelled against him. And it says, at a time point he shall return and come toward the south, but it shall not be as the former or as the latter. It's not going to be the way that he wanted it. It's not going to work out the way he wants it to be. For this time he comes, and he's actually being very successful. I think he's on his way to Alexandria. I'm just going off the top of my head. You can do more study on this later. But it says that the ships of Chittim shall come against him. Now this is Chittim is just a place. Cyprus. It's Cyprus. It's a word that refers to Cyprus along the Mediterranean Sea, which is where the Romans would probably have gone in order to get ships to sail down into Egypt. And so this is referring to the Romans coming and meeting him. And in fact, it is true that Gaius Pompilius Lennius came and met him on the seaside in ships and said, "You will not attack the Ptolemies." Now, this is because he's about to finally and eternally conquer the Ptolemaic Empire and rule all of the Middle East. Well, that's going to be a problem for Rome because Rome is successfully rising to power because there's this conflict between the North and the South in the Middle East among the Greeks. If Antiochus Epiphanes wins this, it's going to be harder for Rome to conquer him later. So the Rome shows up and on the beach as Antiochus Epiphanes is marching towards Alexandria, if I'm not mistaken. And Gaius Pompilius Lennius meets with Antiochus and says, "Listen, if you go and attack any further into Egypt, you will be at war with Rome. We are going to attack you." And Antiochus says, "Well, let me think about it for a minute, for a few days." And Gaius Pompilius Lennius takes out a stick and draws in the sand a circle around Antiochus Epiphanes and says, "You will give me your answer before you step outside of this circle, or you'll be at war with Rome." It's the line in the sand, right? And so Antiochus is very angry. He knows he can't battle Rome. And so he goes home in a rage. And who does he take it out on? Well, he takes it out on the Jews on his way back through Israel from Egypt back up to Syria. So, "For the ships of Chittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant." Meaning he conspires with the renegade Jews who are Hellenized and Greek, and he conspires with them to overthrow anyone who's faithful to the law of God in Israel. "And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength." He offers a pig on the altar. He sets up an image of Zeus, which he thought was himself, in the temple. I mean, he's killing people for not eating pork. I mean, this is really bad. Sets up a nude sporting ring outside of the temple where uncircumcised nude men will be running around. I mean, just evil, terrible stuff. Of course, the worst of it, well, it's one of the worst things being selling the high priesthood to a non-Levite. Just awful things. "But the arms shall stand on his part. He shall pollute the sanctuary of strength. He shall take away the daily sacrifice." They can't offer sacrifice on an altar that's been polluted with pig blood. "And they shall place the abomination." That's speaking of the idol to Zeus in that maketh desolate in the temple. It's unusable. It's desolate. "And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries, but the people that do know their God shall do strong and do exploits." Who's that? That's speaking about the Maccabees. You guys ever heard of the Maccabees? There's a whole book, 2 books, 1st and 2nd Maccabees, that are historical accounts of what the Maccabees did. If you're a Catholic, you believe they are scripture. I think that's wrong. We'll talk about that on another day. Let's talk about the Maccabees. "Such as do wickedly against the covenant, he shall corrupt by flatteries, but the people that know their God shall be strong and do exploits." And that's the Maccabees. They resist. They revolt against the Antiochus Epiphanes and the Greeks. And eventually they actually conquer the city of Jerusalem and purify the temple. That's what the Feast of Hanukkah is, the Feast of Dedication, to remember when they retook the temple and purified it. "And they that understand among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword and by flame and by captivity, by spoil many days." So there are many days where they are not doing so well, the Maccabees. "Now when they shall fall, they shall be holpen with a little help, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries." Some people join with the Maccabees just as at the end as they start to win, but some people will help them. "And some of them of understanding shall fall to try them and to purge and to make them white. Some of the Maccabees did die, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed." So those 35 verses are very specific. You can do more research on this. Much more to be said about them, but they're very specific and they're very obviously specifically fulfilled very clearly in the Greek Empire.